I woke up this morning and I am without symptoms. My temperature is 36.4 degrees, which is normal. So everything is good so far. It has been 10 days since I have been in contact with Senator Bragg, and I note that no other senator that was in the room, or indeed the secretariat that was supporting the Senate inquiry, have come down with any symptoms, but it's always better to be a little bit precautious in these sorts of circumstances, and so I've elected to self-isolate.
So if you came into contact with Andrew Bragg Wednesday last week, does that mean you only have to self-isolate for another 4 days?
So it was Monday last week, and so really it's probably only another couple of days. However, I have been to a doctor this morning who was aware of my circumstances and have now been given a script so I can go and find out definitively whether or not I have COVID-19. I suspect that I don't, but once again, out of an abundance of caution, I will in fact get a test done.
So will you be attending Parliament next week as part of that reduced number of MPs and senators?
Well, that's one of the reasons I want to conduct the test, because if I test negative, then there's nothing that would prohibit me from doing so. If I'm left in an unknown state, I won't attend.
And how does that impact you? Because you're a key crossbench senator. You have a special set of really power to be able to block government legislation. So this is really impacting you quite specifically.
Well, I have a colleague, Senator Sterling Griff, in the Senate, who votes with me on almost every occasion. We've voted together, and simply the government will allow for a pairing, so that when Senator Griff sits on the yes or the no side of the chamber, that will be counted as 2 votes.
And do you have any kind of concerns you're seeing coming through with the stimulus legislation that you wanted to flag? Or?
Look, I haven't really examined it in detail. We don't have the details, but in principle, we do need to have some sort of stimulus to the economy. There's no question about that. There might be some questions about exactly what should be done at the edges, but in principle, we do need to get on and deal with the circumstances that we have in the economy right now.
And you have been specific in asking the government to really be using the resources of medical students and student nurses. It does come with its own risks. They aren't fully trained and they might not have the same oversight that you'd expect from anyone giving medical treatment.
Look, we have 12,000 final year nurses in our schools. We have 3,000 final year doctors in our universities. And that allows us to perhaps draw on them. I'm not expecting them to conduct surgery, but simply to conduct testing. Many of them will have had practical experience. And this is an approach that has been adopted both in China and in some of the other jurisdictions now where they're having to deal with substantially more people. I've just come from regional South Australia, the Eyre Peninsula, where I know there is a shortage of doctors. And if this virus makes its way onto the Eyre Peninsula, then there will be some difficulties. And so right now, basically what we need to do is get ourselves ready, understand who could assist, and clearly trained nurses and doctors, or those in their last year of education, ought to be able to participate and assist in these circumstances.
What do you make of the Prime Minister's announcement today? I'm not sure if you got to catch it from your home isolation, but it was a very Prime Ministerial address. We saw that real Commander-in-Chief kind of presence, and this did come along with some pretty strict measures about public gatherings, limiting the interaction people can have in workplaces and things like that. Even churches are going to have a limited number of attendees. Do you think this is enough from the government, and have they moved soon enough?
Well, there are many things that the government has done that I've supported. Those that have been following me over the last month or so will note that I've made calls earlier than the government has for particular things to occur. I agree with your previous guest in the context of messaging is a little bit confusing. People trying to work out whether they should or should not get tested, whether or not they should or should not self-isolate. I was confronted with a situation yesterday where I was on the Eyre Peninsula. I asked advice as to whether, noting that I'd been in contact with someone with COVID-19, whether or not I should jump on a plane and fly from Port Lincoln to Adelaide. The advice I got from the coronavirus hotline was yes. I thought about that for some time and in the end decided to drive back. So there are some things going on that I don't quite understand, and the government messaging is not clear. They need to be far more open with the Australian public about what their projections are, what their next steps are, and what people should be doing should those steps be enacted.
And I think a question about the number of testing kits is on a lot of people's minds as well. Rex Patrick, thank you for joining us live there from your self-isolation.